Slow Robot, okay. Today I want to talk about Satellite, which is a new, I think new-ish plugin from Mixed in Key. And basically this is a cool tool that allows you to collaborate with others easily, even if you have different DAWs and different instruments and different, everybody has different instrument plugins and different effects and all that stuff. And this kind of renders all that kind of complexity of managing all that moot. You don't have to worry about it. And I'm not going to go in depth in how it works and all that stuff. There are other videos on how to do that, and it's fairly straightforward for the most part. But what I did want to do is show that you can use it in Reason. It's a little wonky in Reason, and kind of show some of the weirdness that I encountered in trying to use this, and also to give a example of a way you can use it by yourself. So I spent all of yesterday morning playing with myself. And that basically means I was using Reason as the host for this collaboration session, and I wanted to use it with Ableton. And the reason I wanted to do that is because there are some features in Ableton that I really wanted to use in this track that I'm working on that don't exist in Reason. And so I thought, well, why don't I try this Satellite thing out and see if it works? As one user, can I use it to kind of bridge the gap between two different DAWs? And it works. It works pretty well, as a matter of fact. So I'm pretty excited about it. And again, I'm going to show some of the quirks in Reason. And again, this isn't a guide on how to use it, but I just want to kind of show what you can do with it. And yeah, so let's get started. So basically, I have this song here, and I programmed all these drums into it. I have an Addictive Drums instance in here, and I did all this in blocks. This is just the kind of like starter sounds that I have. I had built up these different blocks of just sounds, pulled them into the session, and because you're using blocks, it's very static. Every time it goes through the same chorus, it's gonna have the same MIDI notes there in this chorus as it has in this chorus, and so on and so forth. And so what I wanted to do is use Live to the features in Live. I wanted to take this MIDI part, these MIDI drums, and liven them up, make them feel more, a little more random. And so one of the features in Live 11 is that you have per note probabilities, and you have, random velocity ranges in there. And so I took the Satellite, I added it to my session, and I was able to export the MIDI from Reason and move it into Ableton, and then do what I needed to do in terms of adding my randomization here, and then export it back into the Satellite session and import it into Reason again. But again, there's some weirdness in Reason. Reason's always kind of the odd guy out when it comes to functionality like this. So there's some stuff you have to be aware of. So the first thing is that the documentation for Satellite says that you're supposed to drag it onto a MIDI track. In Reason, it's really just treated as an instrument. So if you look in the browser under Instruments, you'll see that you have Satellite Sessions here. And basically, you just drag it in, and it becomes its own MIDI track right here. And so that's the first kind of slightly weird thing. You're not dragging it directly onto a MIDI track like you would in Ableton or another DAW. From there, it was pretty easy. You just add your, either audio output. I took the stem so that, I had this is basically just taking it's on the master bus, so on the master output here, I took the audio from that and went into that master track of all the entire mix went into the satellite session, and that's what I used to listen in the Ableton session. So I didn't do like individual tracks. In Reason, I didn't export a whole bunch of individual stems because I didn't need to work on individual stems in Ableton. I just needed that main track. But it was a pretty easy process to do that. You add it to the whatever you want to record. Make sure that the capture audio button is on, and hit play, and it will go through and do that, and it'll automatically record into your satellite session. And then once you stop, it'll upload to the server, and then it will be available pretty quickly on the other end. So in the other instantiation, in my case in Ableton. But the other thing that is really quirky with Reason is that the keyboard commands, it bypasses the plugin. So if you come in here, you see I have this labeled full mix. You can't actually type this in Reason. What I had to do in order to get these labeled properly was I pulled up a text editor, or in my case, I pulled up a internet window like this, and basically all you do is, if you need it, you just type in whatever you want to call it. So in this case, if I want to rename it renamed track, so I've just typed that in and then copy this. I'll hit Ctrl+X to get that out of there, and then come back in here, and then you can select it. And I don't think, I wouldn't hit Ctrl+V because you don't want to use the keyboard shortcuts, because again, that's going to tell this to try and paste it into Reason. So what you have to do is right click and hit paste, and it should, it added it in there, but so you right click and paste, and it'll go in there. So it's a little weird. You can't just type it in here the way you can. Like, I had no trouble naming these tracks in Ableton. So that's just one thing that's kind of weird in Reason to be aware of. But so once you have your audio or MIDI captured, the MIDI capture works the same way. I added my, I don't think it's on here anymore. Actually, in Reason, it's a little different. So because MIDI is attached to the instrument here in Reason, you can't just like take the satellite MIDI and drag it onto the actual instrument, because it's gonna basically just replace the addictive drums or whatever MIDI instrument you have with your satellite MIDI, and obviously that's not going to actually do you any good. You're not going to be able to hear your, in my case, drums anymore. So what I had to do here was drag a satellite MIDI as a separate track into Reason. So I guess this is quirk number 2, and then basically select and just copy the information into the satellite track, and then you see that it's ready to go. We can come in here, rename this. We'll call this fake addictive drums, and then copy this. Same way we did just a minute ago. Paste that in here just to have it so it's in there. And then you see that this capture MIDI is already selected. And then basically I'm just going to back up the transport here and then play. So now it's taking this track, not the addictive drums track, but the duplicate information I pasted into the satellite track, and it should be appearing in, that's the other fun thing, is it tries to place stuff back with different instrumentations. So different instruments, so I think it thinks it's like a piano track. But if I scroll back here, you should be able to see that. Come on. So right here is where we recorded that. So this would now be available in, actually, if I do that, let me go into Ableton, and we'll go to my satellite instance here, and it should be in here at this point. See, we see fake addictive drums, which we just added. If we scroll over, that should be in here as well. Okay, so we got it. It's working as we would expect, which is great. But yeah, okay, so that's good. So I got that's how I got the MIDI from Reason into Satellite, and then I got the MIDI from Satellite into Ableton. Then what I did was I came into the once I had it imported here, I just cut these into the different clips that I wanted to work with, and I did my editing. So I came in here and I did, so you can see these ones with the little arrow in the corner. I just added some randomness to it, so these tom hits will now, you know, they're not, you can't hear this because I don't have the audio set up to record through Ableton, but basically I just added some randomness to the toms, and I changed around some of the different patterns and stuff that I had in here, and added some velocity differences, and just kind of filled it out the way that I wanted to using Ableton. And then I basically did the opposite process to get the MIDI back from Ableton into Reason. So, you know, I added my if we go back to our set, you see I have a satellite MIDI here in on this Addictive Drums track, and that I just recorded back into Satellite, and then I took that, once I was done with that, came back into Reason and imported it into Reason. Now that's where there's another kind of weird thing that happens in Reason, specifically, is importing audio and MIDI is kind of a little bit weird. So I did try some audio tracks, and for some reason the audio tracks don't, in my experience, sync up all the time with where you would necessarily drop them, or with the original recording. So you may have to kind of move them around. But so like if I try and grab this guy and just drag it into, I'll just put it in a new track here and see where we end up. So it does some weird things. So for one, you see it pasted one down here in a new track where the cursor is. And it also, I believe, pasted one wherever I dragged it, which I can't even see where that is. Oh, I think it's over here. Yeah, it's right here. So it doesn't always know exactly where to paste things, at least with the audio tracks, in my experience. So you may have to kind of fiddle around with where you're dragging it, like just making sure you line stuff up with that. I haven't had any real trouble with the MIDI drag and drop, but there's also some weirdness there as well. So I'm going to undo that real quick. Audio. So you're going to see that I have to undo the audio import twice. Okay. I know my voice sounded weird there because it was I had the input monitor on that new channel that came in. So but yeah, so if we pull in the MIDI, what happens is it can be a little confusing because, okay, so let's say I want to pull it into my I'll just pull it into the satellite track. And if you see, I can put it wherever I want. Let me put it right here. And so this is weird, right? This is not, this whole thing, this whole section goes all the way from the start to the end of the song. And obviously this is just a very small portion of it. So I was very confused at first, but if you look at the very end, you'll see it added a new MIDI track, and this one is actually lined up perfectly where it needs to be. So what you can do then is just copy this and move it up to wherever you need it to be. So in this case, I would put it on my Addictive Drums track. And then you can just delete this clip here. I don't know why it does that, but it's another one of those weird things that that happens with Satellite in Reason. So that's pretty much it. It's really, there is a little bit of a learning curve in terms of just getting around the weirdness of it. It's definitely taking me some getting used to, and I've only been using it since yesterday, so it's going to get more familiar to me, and it should be pretty useful. I'm definitely looking forward to using this with the singer in my band. He also has Reason, but I'm starting to shift more into using Ableton. So he's going to be able to, we're going to be able to still work together. He can use Reason, I can use Ableton, and I can flip back and forth within Reason too. And, you know, if he has rack extensions that I don't have and vice versa, that's not going to be an issue anymore with Satellite. So once you understand kind of some of the weird things that happen in Reason, it's pretty useful. It's pretty straightforward to use, and it's fun. It's really cool. So I definitely would suggest, if you are interested in collaboration and you've tried it in Reason before and you know, you kind of gave up on it, maybe give it another shot. Once you kind of understand some of the weird things that happen, it's not too bad. You just really got to remember, you know, that copy paste thing for renaming tracks. You got to make sure that when you're importing audio, it's going to go in the right spot. And then when you import MIDI, that you're not looking at where you dragged it. You got to always look at the end of your session, where there's going to be a MIDI file that it drops, and it should be pretty much in perfect sync. So, yeah, try it out, see if you like it, but it's a cool thing. And, like you said, especially if you're using a couple of different DAWs and you like some features of one that are not in the other, and you want to use them just for like one thing here or there, you know, this is a pretty powerful way of doing that without having to do the whole like export import thing. It's really, once you get the hang of it a little bit, it's pretty straightforward. Just again, keep in mind the strangeness whenever you're working in Reason. But yeah, hopefully this was useful, and take care.